to record. Look at this.
Yeah. I was about to tell you. Good for you.
I know. Finally. Oh, Christy was nominated for a push cart today. Yay! I probably wasn't supposed to share that, but I did anyway. So congratulations.
I haven't posted on Facebook yet, but I've only known for 30 minutes.
Oh, wow.
That's really exciting. Way to go. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So we stay on time.
Did you want to make me coast?
Yes.
Did you want to make me coast? So I can
that would be great. Okay. Here we go. All right. Welcome everyone to our 7th Virginia Voices with co-host Cathy, Hailey, VP of the Northern Region of PSV, and myself, VP of the Western Region. As many of you know, Poetry Society of Virginia has launched its Centennial celebration, which will culminate in our annual statewide festival in May of 2023. The Centennial Committee settled on a theme for our year-long celebration, Virginia Voices 100 Years and Beyond. Cathy and I started this series in order to get to know our members better by hearing their poetry, finding out what they enjoy about PSV, and what their hopes are for it as our community moves into the next century. On the second Wednesday of every month from May 2022 until May 2023, we will gather to ask our guests the same 3 questions. No doubt this will be an adventure as we hear some similar answers, some we've never thought of yet. And one of my favorite shows where people had almost opposite, like polar answers, and they were both great answers, but it was fascinating to see that and wonder how they could coexist in an organization. As we're inspired, challenged, and reminded of why we came together in a poetry community to begin with. Bill Glose and Kathleen Decker have both been generous enough to post recordings of the episodes on their PSV YouTube channels. Audience members, we want to encourage you to use all the ways Zoom provides to interact with our guests today. Please feel welcome to place your praise and thoughts in the chat or use the reactions at the bottom of the screen to interact. I know this hour is going to go really fast, and what I most want to hear is from Cherryl and Rich. So we'll get started. Poet, playwright, fiber artist Cherryl T. Cooley has published 2 volumes of poems as Cherryl Floyd Miller, Utterance, A Museology of Kin, and Exquisite Heats. Her art poetry chapbook Chops, produced in conjunction with Nexus Press in 2004, won an AIGA Gold Seed Award and is permanently housed in the Museum of Modern Art. The chapbook was produced as a part of her dialogue fellowship with the Fulton County Arts Council in Atlanta. Also a recipient of literary fellowships from Caldera, Cava Canem, the Vermont Studio Center, Idlewild Summer in Poetry, and Indiana Arts Commission. Cheryl's work has appeared in Poetry, Essence Magazine, North Carolina Literary Review, Copper Nickel, Crab Orchard Review, Anthropology and Humanism, and numerous anthologies. Cherryl is the inaugural winner of the Companion Poems Contest, co-sponsored by the Virginia Center for the Book and Poetry Daily. A poem from her unpublished manuscript, Hoofer, was selected by the Lincoln Center for Performing Arts to accompany a fall 2017 concerto by Brooklyn, New York-based musical ensemble, So Percussion. The 2022 winner of the Joseph Pendleton Campbell Memorial Poetry Award from the Poetry Society of Virginia. Cherryl loves, works, and lives from Woodbridge, Virginia. I think we could do a show on your bio. Like, I have 20 million questions every time I read it. Like, what about this? And how'd you do this? I want to know more about this. And the same is true for Rich's. Rich Follett has been living and working in Virginia as a poet, educator, singer, songwriter, actor, playwright, musician, and editor since 1981. He holds a master's degree in curriculum and instruction from the University of Phoenix and is a current EDD candidate through Walden University. He has been an English, theater, creative writing, and mythology teacher for Virginia Public Schools, for the past 25 years. Since 2018, he has served as the Poet Laureate for his adopted hometown of Strasburg in the Shenandoah Valley. He has published 4 collections of poetry: Responsorials co-written with Constance Stadler, Silence, Inhabited, and Human, etc., and an ekphrastic collection, Photo Coup, Kigo, and Satori at Play in Pixelland. Rich is a life member of the Poetry Society of Virginia and a contributor to its Centennial anthology. In addition, he has served on review and evaluation panels for both the PSV and the VCA. He has been a guest poet for the College of Southern Maryland, Laurel Ridge Community College, Shenandoah University, Hanley Regional Library, the Virginia Commission for the Arts, being in the company of Laureates Biennial Symposium, and others. We are so excited to hear the poetry that y'all have brought. And I knowing Rich and just reading about you, Cherryl, I know the thoughtful answers that we're going to get today. So let's start where PSV started, with a poem. Rich, VP of PSV's Northwestern region, will you please share first?
Certainly, thank you. Since we are at the very tail end of what has been a glorious fall, I thought I would lead off with a brief poem about the fall. It's called Prophecy. It is always the same: green, 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 and then maddening how it always comes at the precise moment when you stop looking. One tree is on fire. It is always too much of life and death in one frame, always a spirit leap followed by proof of gravity. Try as we may, we can never prepare for this exquisite red, orange, yellow, gold eulogy. We are exalted and bereft in a moment, quivering foxes, at once craving and dreading the baying of the hounds. For today, I will welcome this autumnal augury. I will wear it like a shawl and let it speak to me of dawn rather than sunset. For today, I will be one tree ablaze.
Nicely read as well as nicely written, Rich. And I have to say, so I learned a lot of vocabulary and pronunciation with your bio. And the same is true, like with the language that you choose for your poems. It's really interesting to me. And I see even in the chat that that's one of the things that people were picking up on and resonating with. Some of your word choices, they're elevated yet and they fit and they flow, and it's an education in itself. So thank you for that. And so we'll start with our first question with you, Rich. Will you please share your personal approach to poetry?
Well, all right. I begin by trying to make myself a camera. I take a look at something to see what I see. And if I see anything that I think might speak to others, I then take myself out of the picture as much as I possibly can and just let it sort of wash over me and see what sticks. And what I hope to end up with is a universal point of view that's sort of informed by my own voice, which, as you said, is a bit different than some others. And I hope that in the end, I will come up with something that offers a new perspective with a deep reverence for language and a deep reverence for poetry that I've had virtually all my life. That's it.
I was looking for the unmute button, Rich. I'm sorry about that. You do have a deep reverence for language and for poetry. I've been fortunate enough to serve with you in a few different settings, and that always comes out with you. Also, I think working with others in poetry, it isn't just about your poetry. you've always seemed to have that same reverence for others and for wanting to foster their growth. So Cheryl, we're going to move on, and I'd really like for you to start with the poem, and then we'll move into your personal approach to poetry.
Great, thank you. We're moving into end of year holidays, specifically Thanksgiving, and I am deeply preparing for both of my parents to be in my space at the same time. So the first poem is for my father, and I think that's all the preface I'll give you. And it's titled Bull. The whoppers my father could tell, that he walked to school and back without shoes in 98-degree sun, on blazing rocks and an empty stomach, every day until he was 17. Of the time when he and Sugar Pig beat down all the brutes who lived up on the hook, 'cause you know them boys would cut your throat and steal the heart right out of your chest, and that's why most of them are in jail or dead today. Yeah, he and Sugar Pig sent them home scared and crying. Or the time he had to fight the devil for his guitar. How the horny red little urchin with a bow and arrow tail and swap lizard skin marched with his pitchfork right into my grandmama's front door. She and granddaddy at church, of course, and snatched daddy's Fender acoustic by the strings. In the middle of Jesus Keep Me Near the Cross, daddy poured a gallon of Lipton Sun tea on that joker's head and watched him holler all the way back to hell. We knew all the yak by heart, watched him scratch his head and shuck his shoes to the side to gnash into the next story. Our charge each time, on the brink of our laughter, teary ducks, eyes red.
That was incredible. And one thing I thought too that was really interesting is that Rich was talking about the camera and the camera lens and the way he moves in and out, and your ability to capture every detail of things. Like, I just felt like it was such a detailed poem that I couldn't even take the time to write anything in the chat because I would miss that next moment, and I didn't want to miss it and what you were painting. And so I feel like you used some of that. I don't know how you think about that, but to me, it felt like I was watching a video or a film or looking through an album. And so tell us about your approach to it.
I am a sponge. I am a sponge. I am a storyteller. I think that I come from two parents who gave me many gifts, but storytelling is right up there at the top. They both are excellent storytellers. Sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes not so much. I also am a person who, coming from North Carolina, growing up there, I throw the whole kitchen sink in. My daddy is a gospel musician, so there's music always in my poems somehow, some way. And my mother is a person who can look at something once and reproduce it. I don't know how she does it, but she does. And I seem to have inherited that in poetry as well. I look at something once, I have a feeling about it, and then I go away and I capture it. I capture everything that I could take in with all of my senses. And then I'm also a person who believes that poetry is not restricted to the page. It is not restricted to books. Books and pages are just the beginning. People can be poems. My father is a poem, and that is why this particular piece was written. So I experience poetry in many more ways than just the traditional ways that we have all along.
People can be a poem. I hear you. Yeah, I appreciate that. And I knew this was going to be this kind of show where I'm like, I don't want to go on to the next question. I have questions about what you just said, but I'm going to stick to my script. And sometimes at the end, I get extra question time. So the next question that we would move on to is to understand what made you join Poetry Society of Virginia and how it may have made a difference to you. Cherryl, would you lead us into that?
Sure. First and foremost, community is extremely important to most writers. I will say some writers have different motives or intentions for being writers. It's important to connect with other creatives so that you keep your juices flowing. You're feeding to each other and off of each other. Poetry Society in Virginia in particular was a draw for me because it holds a lot of the state's history, how poetry has evolved over centuries, over decades, not centuries, over decades here in our state. And it also provided an opportunity for me as a person who works for a living as a narrative strategist to maybe add my voice to that evolution and help keep us grounded in the 21st century. Cathy can tell you that I am a person who pushes back often on our practices, how we open up what poetry is for people, invite people in, create space for different voices at the table, and how we preserve poetry as an art form. Yeah.
Didn't you just take a position with PSV to volunteer? Everything at PSV is volunteer. So weren't you kind and generous enough to step in recently and take a role? What wasn't it?
I did. Social media chair.
And that seems like it fits right in with what with what you're interested in, keeping us rooted in the 21st century. And also nobody has said that yet, that it holds a lot of the state's history of poetry. Like that blew my mind, and I'm gonna take some time to have to sit with that because I have not heard that before. And then I think about you taking this new role. And are these the things that went on in your head when you're like, you know what, I'm going to give up some of my time for this?
Absolutely. If you think about it from a perspective of power, Poetry Society of Virginia leads for poet laureates to the governor.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to know the poets who have had significant influence over time, there's a track record, and PSV was right in the middle of that, if not at the head of that. And when I started doing research, I moved to the state in 2017, and I started doing research because I just kind of felt like Woodbridge is a little isolated. Where is my tribe? I'm out here creating by myself. And I just found so much information on like the writers who have been here over time. And almost everyone I came across was connected to PSV in some kind of way.
Okay. And so that's a pretty natural segue because Rich, you just recently did a similar thing, stepped up and took the office that no one had taken. And tell us a little bit about that, and then follow in with why you joined PSV and what it's meant to you.
Well, I did indeed step up to become the regional vice president for the Northwestern region. There was, and to some extent still is, a real deficit in my area, but it's sort of a voiceless deficit, which is a double insult to the art of poetry. There are a great many people who have a passion for poetry, and they did not have a vehicle or a venue. And I felt that through the auspices of the Poetry Society of Virginia, I might be able to help build a little bit of a bridge And the proof is in the pudding, because our first event to launch the Centennial, we're having at the Handley Regional Library in November on the 19th. And I had hoped to attract 6 poets to read, and I have attracted nearly 30, and we've had to extend the time of the event by a whole hour.
Wow.
So I definitely twigged on to something that was missing for our community. And I'm very grateful to PSV for giving me the courage. I would never have done that on my own, but as a representative of an organization that I admire and respect, I have a backbone that I wouldn't normally have. And I can say, hey, I am from the PSV. Not only that, I'm the regional vice president, and I'm organizing this event, and I really don't want you to be left out.
Mhm.
And if you knew better, you'd know what a remarkable statement that sort of thing is for me, because I tend to be invisible most of the time. So I really have tremendous gratitude for the opportunities that PSV provides and continues to provide. As far as joining, I was really terribly isolated. The Shenandoah Valley is beautiful, and it's a hotbed of all kinds of talents, poetic, musical, literary, but they're all veiled, really. There's no venues. There's family reunions and church suppers and exactly the sort of events that bring people together but do nothing to cement a career. And so I just felt like I wanted, poetry is like a second oxygen to me. I can't live without both my oxygens. And I was acutely feeling that, and thought that maybe if I joined the PSV, which I did as a life member, because that's who I am, I do everything all the way or not at all. And I just thought if I joined, maybe I would be lucky enough to find the society of some other poets and start to feel a little less isolated. And I have found so much more than I ever imagined. And I feel certain that anybody who's aligned with PSV would say much the same thing. It's a remarkable organization. And I think under-heralded, undervalued, and largely unknown to many people who probably should be a part of it. So.
Yeah, probably so. And I think, Rich, you're Northwestern and I'm Western. And so I think we end up, maybe our regions aren't as connected to the pulse of it. And that responsibility lies on people like you and I to get it going and make that connection for others. And I'm really grateful you stepped up and took that. And it's kind of making me think, I feel like I heard this, either I was reading minutes of a board meeting or I heard this in another PSV meeting, but that the way for PSV to have the most impact on your life, or not on your life, but on you as a poet, right? On you as an artist, is to get involved. So just like what both of you are doing. And I would say, as the VP of the Western region, my experience has been very much like that. Like, I wouldn't feel as much from it had I not taken this position, because it gave me the authority to walk into spaces. I didn't know it had any authority, but apparently if you say you're the VP of something, everybody makes room for you. They're like, yeah, you can use this room. Yeah, you can do this. I'm like, I could have made this up. I don't have a card or anything. I don't know, but it works. It really works. And so, yeah, it's crazy. But, and so I see some of my members, some of the members from the Western region, Bobby and Erica and Ken, and we're going to need a new Western VP. So y'all take note of what a difference it can make in your life if you run for the Western VP next term. Okay, so y'all are beautiful poets. I can't wait for this next part and see what you're going to bring to us. Cherryl, will you start first with the poem this time?
Sure. This poem is an Ars Poetica, and it is written as a telegram. 2004, November 12th, 8:27 p.m. Poet, I believe you. Stop. Mean well. Stop. Do well. Stop. Bring teeth for your bite. Stop. Make your ditties and dirges hum. Stop. Won't forget to play the water-filled glasses, the cowbell, those chicken bones. Breathe. Clunky kettles. the cluck roof of your mouth, your belly or thigh. Stop, stop. Go on, stop. Gumbo yaya, when all the scribes decide to kumbaya. Stop. Be a poet. Stop. For real. Stop. Show your whole butt to the stanza popes and the concrete image nuns. Stop. Be magic. Stop. Realism. Stop. Say you've kissed Kumanyaka and Stern between the Pulitzer and Papyrus. Stop. Yep, they're both men. Stop. Point to the picture of dead Emily Dickinson as Jesus in pin curls, a hairbreadth corset, breeze, and a satin petticoat hoisted up to her Lord of mercy, I feel faint, kneecaps break. When English fails you, do this. Imagine, stop. Especially what you don't know, stop. Remember the tulip is just a flower, stop. Neat beauty, stop. Everything beneath a hot marble of sun is music, stop. Find yours, stop. Get to the handsome twang of decibels before there was meaning hammered into your swollen poet's ear, stop. Live inside every leap and bluff that is not them or us who told you so, stop. Tell the tight-faced critics when they ask that I sent you, stop, and I will send you again. Your poem, the Ars Poetica Manifesto Political Persona Rant.
Okay. So a little bit speechless. The sounds, like, so did choosing the telegram, did that allow you the freedom with sounds that you seem to have in there, or do you feel like you always, okay. Yeah.
Well, we know that an Ars Poetica really is revealing my attitude about poetry in some kind of way. And I just feel like sometimes people who are actually pretty good poets get in their own way because they overthink it. They're trying to be this kind of poet and write this kind of poem and compete for this particular kind of prize instead of just showing up and doing it. And this was my way of saying, hey, I'm going to send a telegram to all of us, because sometimes I may fall in this trap too, to say, stop it. Stop, just write. That's all you're obligated to do. Just show up and write. You can edit and fix it later, but to get it out of you and stop, I don't really believe in writer's block, but what some people call writer's block, just show up and do it.
And so I'm going to ask you one more question about something you just said, because you have received several, you've been in several residencies or fellowships. Like you've been successful in your applications and in your searches for certain things. I mean, it's impressive. And so it's very competitive. So is that your approach? Like, do you just, I'm not going to worry about what they're looking for. I'm not going to worry, and just, I'm going to do me. Is that?
Yeah. Well, this is going to be a loaded answer. I do show up as myself because I think I'm the best qualified to do that. And it has not always worked. Like, you really have to go through a number of processes to get some traction and find some success. And it is disappointing when people don't get it. But then what I always have to remind myself of is I don't do it for them. I don't. When there is a no, I'm still going. In spite of what someone else has decided I can or can't be, I get to do that. I get to make that decision. So I think it is just best to not be prissy about it. Show up as exactly who you are. Make no apologies for it. Let your music shine exactly the way that I said in the poem. Find your music and kind of stick with it. I had a residency once with with Heather McHugh, who lives on the West Coast. And we were workshopping one of my pieces. And it wasn't the same poem she had seen the day before. So she comes back to me in the workshop and she's quiet. And when she breaks her silence, she's like really cursing. She said, "What is wrong with this poem is the MFers have taken your music." And I just thought, okay, that is coming from Heather McHugh, who is really echoing what I felt but didn't act on.
Mhm.
So from that moment forward, I have never compromised that.
Yeah. I love everything you said. One of the things I especially like, and I think I'll probably use in the future, reminding others and myself, is the number of processes you have to go through before you start gaining traction, and reminding yourself that you're not doing it for them anyway. Like it was never
Right.
for you. And
Right.
I thought that was really beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Rich.
Hi, hello. Cherryl, I just wanted to say real quick, I identify so strongly with so much of what you're saying. I feel a great kindred spirit energy with you and your creative process. I too have a musician father who was at times distant and unavailable, and I found him in the music, and the music is in me through the poetry. So I know what that feels like. And I just wanted to say it's very affirming to hear you say those things. So this is from my collection, Human, Etc. It's called Alum, Lime, and Thyme. 2 pickles in a mason jar, Shenandoah dill, grass green and crisp, wrinkled viridian jewels inveigling clear through the closed door of the refrigerator. No side dishes these, rather transcendent bonne bouche of brine, each a petite peon to halcyon summer. 1 week ago, the jar was full, gift from a friend's kitchen, the work of her loving hands. In the time since, my wife and I, with childish grins and dripping chins, have savored each one so fully as to have numbered and named them with our delight. Thanks praying for these benisons as dear to us as fleeting youth, and repenting our reckless pickle lust even as we reached with giggling, guilty fingers for another. 1 week ago, the jar was full. 1 week ago, the vibrant, extraordinary young woman who blessed us with sunshine from a crock was at our door. Today, news of her passing.
Mm.
Incomprehensible, really, that 2 pickles in a mason jar could be all that remains, the only tangible remnant of her sweetness in our life. It is so inexpressibly cruel for the line between here and gone to be so fine, the parting so sudden. Here in our kitchen, I stand in my bathrobe, feeling a chill clear through the closed door of the refrigerator. 1 week ago, I would not have believed. Tonight, I opened the refrigerator door just to stare at 2 pickles in a mason jar, 2 perfect barrel lobes. Open the door, hold my breath, and pray, hoping against hope that I will see them begin to beat.
Mm. Mm. Rich. That was so masterfully done. And
Thank you.
yeah, because, and what was so interesting to me too, like, so in the poem was moving, right? But as a poet, I also feel like I have to note that universality that you talked about wanting, like that's a really important thing to you in poetry. You achieved it on so many different levels, right? And while you were doing the lens thing, the camera thing you like to do, where you're moving in and out, you were doing that too. And that was part of your universality. You started on the pickles, and this really like tangible experience. I'm having a visceral response, and I'm thinking about Miss Edmonds pickles that I bring home to my husband every time I go visit her, and like and what these pickles mean to me. And she's in her late 80s, and I'm thinking about her. And then you do this turn. You've got like this volta, and it happens, and you go to this universality of brevity of life and of loss. And I don't know, I guess I actually was talking about this right before I got on the show today. Someone I've missed for 38 years. That's hard. That's hard to believe. 38 years, and I still cry about it. I'm gonna try not to. And I was thinking about, I was having that exact moment you had when you open the refrigerator and are just wishing they would start beating, like that moment. You articulated that moment for me, and I deeply appreciate that. Thank you. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. This is a good show. Y'all are doing great. I'm loving this. Okay. I was tired, and now I'm like, I am happy. Okay. So, I have written on my notes, this is the question that burns for me, but actually everything about this show is burned for me. So I don't know if that's just true anymore. But I do have to say, this question, I still remember Geneviese's answer to this question. And it takes up space. And I think it takes up permanent space in my head now. One of the things that she would like to see from PSV, and the way she sees poetry as healing, and the way that can be used, and the way PSV could be a vehicle to promote more of that. And like it is constantly rolling around in here, and how we can manifest something, just even just a little sparkle to start doing that. So I love this question. I cannot wait to hear y'all's answers. Rich, as this organization, because you and I may not traverse the next 100 years, what do you hope to see for the organization?
Well, I think art that does not perpetuate itself endangers itself. I'm a teacher. I spend my life encouraging younger people to find their voice and use it on a whole lot of different levels. And I would really like to see a program. I've been putting together mental notes in my mind and a little bit on paper. I would like to see a program where by region, young poets could be paired with a sort of grown-up poet mentor who would work them through and encourage them in a way that classroom instruction cannot. I've seen how young people respond to some personal attention, especially in the area of their creative spirit. And I think that would be an ideal avenue for the Poetry Society of Virginia to branch out into. It's a program I'd love to see get started. I'd be willing to take it on and try and oversee it. Apart from that, I think I'd like to see more opportunities for action between emerging poets, whether they are young or old or of any age, more interaction between emerging poets and established poets so that the divide is not so great. I've been an emerging poet recently. I didn't write for more than 30 years. I just came back to it. And as an emerging poet at a relatively advanced age, I felt that many people I admired and respected were not approachable. And my antidote to that was to write a letter to two of my favorite poets. I wrote one letter to Naomi Shihab Nye, whose work I admire greatly. And I wrote another letter to Wendell Berry, whose work I admire greatly. And to my astonishment, both of them wrote me back very quickly. And I've been corresponding with both ever since on a very casual basis. And that led me to believe that it was really possible to have meaningful, mutually sustaining interaction between poets at different levels of experience. Maybe that's just the teacher in me talking, but I think we could have a bit broader teaching arm in the Poetry Society of Virginia, or better yet, an encouraging arm. People don't necessarily need to be taught, but they do need to be encouraged and have things modeled for them. And I'll shut up now. That's my soapbox, and I do it.
No, don't be quiet. So I don't want to put you on the spot, but like, what would that look like? Like you don't have to get every detail right or anything. Just like, how would you know that it had happened, or how would you start, or just give me something tangible I can envision.
In the notes in my mind and on my little margins of my papers that I've been writing on, I can see where a poet, either emerging as an adult or a young poet, whatever, would send a work sample, and that work sample can be compared against the work of our poets in the association, in the Society of Virginia, for a good fit, just a similar spirit, a similar spark, a sort of harmonic resonance between the two works. And then I would probably write a letter or a postcard or make a call or an email to the more experienced poet and say, would you be willing to read this work and perhaps encourage this poet along, and just see where that got. And if it wasn't successful, I try somewhere else until I found a good match, sort of like a big brother, big sister kind of approach. That's the best way I can see that working, so no one feels put upon. But I think it could be something meaningful that would endure long after I'm here to encourage it. I think it might endure. So
I think that's great. Oops, sorry, Rich, I cut you off. What did you say?
No, I just said those are my thoughts on that. So
yeah, it reminds me of AWP's writer to writer mentorship. And it's set up kind of similarly. And I had the chance to do that twice. And it's outstanding. And so I think that's something that PSV could set up and could do something like that. Absolutely. That's great. I think we'll go to Cherryl for your answer, and then that way we'll end on poems, because I really want to leave on you're both such strong poets. I really want to leave on your lyrics.
My answer. I really would love to see PSV and people in general become transformation agents for poets' lives. There are so many ways that I think, beyond just supporting the work, that organizations can show up. A lot of times people who call themselves poets are choosing between, am I going to work hard and eat, or am I going to work hard at my craft, and making a choice between that. And I really feel like people shouldn't have to make that choice. I feel like it should all be available to them. So just helping people find ways to be poets in their real lives. Imagine the world and the society where, and I'm going to say specifically the US society, where poets are just as respected as professional athletes and doctors and everyone else who seems to be on higher rungs than poets are. I had these experiences when I was a little younger, where I would talk to people from other countries, and when they asked, what do you do? Of course, I had a job, but I always would like to talk with, what I do there is to pay my bills, so that's my livelihood, but poetry is my life. So when they heard I was a poet, there was this excitement, like, oh my God, I'm talking to a real poet. But if I talk with someone who was a US citizen, there was not that excitement. It was like, oh, kind of like, you're frivolous. You're not serious because that's not a real job. What's your real job? This is my real job. So I'd really like to see the world in which poets are equally respected, and equally supported with tools and resources to do that. Why isn't someone teaching younger poets how to turn your life as a poet into an entrepreneurial venture? Why do we think we have to always do poetry for free? Why do people think it's so easy to sit down and craft a poem on the spot and deliver it and then pay you $20 for that? That needs to change. And I'd really love to see, not that I want to put the entire onus of that responsibility on PSV, but I'd love to see them doing more programming and more like full support for writers' lives, for writers' legacies, for writers' estates. What are we building? What are we creating? And I think PSV can be an engine that is helping us like really, really define that each for ourselves and for the poetry community at large.
Yes, I love that. Yes, because I'm paying my student loans and I'd really like to be able to actually pay them and for what I went to school for, poetry. So I feel that. I have those conversations all of the time. And we do, I think as poets, we have this. So I don't know that we'd be poets if we didn't want to share. I mean, I know some people don't share their work, but I think most of us, we want to share, we want to connect. And so we're so quick to say, yes, I'll teach that. Yes, I'll speak at that. Yes, I'll write that. Yes, I'll share that. And we don't even ask, are you going to pay and how much? Or, we don't even think like, well, can we at least can we work to apply for this loan from the VCA together so that I can get paid for these 4 classes? I'm going to travel 2 hours each way to go teach, and I'm starting to do that, right? I'm starting to, when people ask me if I want to do something, I'm like, sure, my rate is, and I go ahead and say my rate. And I'm like, let's work from here because I do. I mean, a graduate degree is not, and even if I didn't have that, like it takes a lot of time, and it's not just time, like it's our soul, right? It's our like life energy that we put down on a page. I think, and that's priceless.
I also want poets to not be afraid to ask.
Yes.
A lot of us. Yeah.
Yes. Or like, you go and you apply for a grant and so you're supposed to put a budget, right? Well, if you're an artist, there are some tangible things you can come up with and feel like, okay, I have the starting point here. If you're a poet, where is that starting point? What is your time worth? How do you even build that out? And I don't, it's as though even if you study the craft, does not seem to be being taught at the same level, but we deserve that. Yeah. Very, very nice. I like that. And it seems to me one of the ways that PSV could do that is offer, like you said, offer those classes. I mean, at our Centennial, we should have a class about the entrepreneurial aspects of poetry. We should do that. That should not be missed, right? And that's
Cherryl, you should get a proposal.
You should. You better have.
Well, the secret and why Cathy is probably laughing is because I already did.
Oh, awesome.
Not accepted yet, though. So,
Rich.
Oh, I have to be very plain about this. I have not read a single one. I'm going to wait until they all close, and that way I know I'm giving them all equal weight. So.
Okay, well, we got a bug in your ear, Rich. Okay, so we're going to run out of time, and I've got to hear your poems. Okay, Rich, you started us. If you'll do this one, and then Cherryl will end us.
All right. I'm going to turn my camera real quick so you can all see. This next poem is not left justified. It is splayed across the page, much like the river of which it speaks. Here, I'll show you a quick view. And it's from an upcoming collection. I've been very very, very fortunate to have been offered the opportunity to publish a volume of new and selected poems. So I'm going to put this in there. This is the title poem. It's called Music in the Name. Oh, have you seen the river? Sun-dappled oxbows meander lazily, cavorting in giddy rills, belying the power to cancel dreams, blighting with madness any hope of a harvest from furrowed banks. Beautiful, that river, as it whispers and whines. Here a chortling fall, there a murmuring curl, an eddy. Shenandoah. There is music in the name. Farmers fear its easy progress. As flooding storms approach, corn and wheat have oft been seen laying themselves low in anticipation. Whole fields lying down to die, choosing to die, in taciturn genuflection before rough winds can render them barren and blown. Abundant crops nearing perfection lying down to die, dying solely for the right to proclaim neither river nor storm bowed them against their will. Free will, rather, drove them to shivering self-sacrifice. Many a settler has lain down in just the same way. At these times, the silver maples lift their leaves in fervent prayer, forming a veil of tears beneath advancing thunderclouds. Last year, on the sunniest day of spring, a careless boy wading after minnows chased one across a murky margin and was swept away in plain sight. Rescuers, witnesses, and passers-by converged, debated, shook their fists, and uttered unholy words, knowing they could see but could not save the gasping youth, whirling and bobbing, nursing at the falcate bosom of the whirlpool by the dam. The force that held him there was stronger than the tools men plied to set him free. On that day, blended voices, drowned cows, sheep, horses, deer, ancestors, warriors, chiefs, traders at rest beneath the river mud, voices of those departed and those newly aggrieved joined across centuries, offering up in unison an ancient shape-note dirge to ease the pain, to appease the raging flow. Oh, have you heard the river? Ebbing, flowing, giving, taking, living, waiting. Shenandoah. There's music in the name.
There's music in all of your poems, Rich. Thank you so much. Thank you for what you brought today. Okay, Cherryl, will you take us home?
I will. This poem is a sonnet. One of the pieces that won the Virginia Center for the Book Award. And it is my tendency to kind of wed highbrow art with lowbrow language. And it has a lot of things that I grew up with. So this one is called Voodoo Chicken. Gots me hanker, gots me squall, peeping tall Tom at your lovely in your throat, and the itch, hellcat itch of it, rides me like a witch into the nights, those crafty nights no calm will come. You just a mule teeth puppet show, stop and go, chicken-hearted to the core. You say don't cross the line or crack the door. How sweet meat, milk, how navy black, how crow. But love has stayed and love is made, is all, is with, for. We almost did, just about, said we, know how, wouldn't, nuh-uh, fall. This moot jinx so far in, it's inside out. We say we won't, but reckon do. Yak, stall for if, wait for good, gut in, ass out.
Thank you, Cheryl. I just y'all were wonderful. It was a great show. I see it was Kelly Sue. Somebody said this has Angel Nafis vibes. And I was like, who else knows Angel's work? And so I don't know if you know Angel's work, Cherryl, but yeah, it definitely has those vibes. Her work is beautiful, just like yours. This was just a terrific show. I'm grateful to everyone who showed up. We've had such a good audience and such good guests, and it's been really meaningful for me. Like, this is why I joined PSV, was to get to know all of y'all, and I'm really grateful. As if you didn't show up, I wouldn't have that chance. So thank y'all for being here. Thank you for being here tonight. If you want to unmute and just give our poets a send off as we close for the night, that would be great.
I just wanted to add that, as usual, we find commonalities with our two poets, even if we, didn't pay attention to how that might work out ahead of time. But the musicality for both of you is incredible, and it's different, but it's that attention to sound that's incredible in both of your works. And your ideas for PSV are ideas that we need to follow up on. So at first I wrote in the chat that Rich's idea was similar to the young poets in the community. It's not really, although it could overlap in some ways. But anyway, both of your ideas are incredible. We need to follow up.
Thank you, Cathy. Thank you. All right. Send y'all home tonight. Thank y'all for being here. See you next month, I hope.
Thank you. It's great.
Or sooner if you decide to come visit me.
Cathy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Had that.
Ah.